Welcome to Conveyancing Matters with Lorraine and Stu. Join us for a chat about all things property.
So, hello. How is everyone?
All good, thank you.
Yes, very well, thank you, Lorraine.
Good. Well, Ewan, I'm delighted to welcome you to Conveyancing Matters. So, Stu and Ewan, let me introduce you. So, Ewan, this is Stu. He runs PCS Legal and does YouTube with me. Stu, this is Ewan. This is Ewan Treadgold from Howes Percival, and Ewan is just fab. Ewan and I worked together for a while, didn't we? And initially, it's fair to say, Ewan, we didn't like each other very much, did we?
Yeah, very much.
Why?
Case, yeah.
We need to know why. You can't leave that cliff. Now, why didn't you like each other?
I would have thought it was obvious, to be honest with you, but clearly not.
Now, I think we just both thought we were just trappy, unpleasant individuals. Ewan was a paralegal in a firm that I worked at Cambridge. I only worked there for a while. And I just thought he was just far too big for his boots, far too bolshy, and just absolutely unbearable. And Ewan, I think it's fair to say you thought I was far too big for my boots, far too bolshy and absolutely unbearable.
Yeah, I think there was quite a bit of that. There was a bit of, I didn't really know what I was doing, but like you say, I was just a cocky, arrogant knob. Some things never change.
No.
I've still got a bit of that in me. I didn't like the fact that you were coming in and telling me how to do the job properly. And
that must have been tricky. That must have been tricky. I have to say, Stu, though, Stu, you and I'm delighted to say introduced me to the joys of Jaeger bombs. And
I wondered when that was going to get a mention.
Nice and early. Oh, Stu, do you know what? It's thanks to you. And I have my worst hangover I've had in recent years. I have to say, I thought I could deal with Jaeger bombs, and I very evidently couldn't.
Oh dear.
At all. But that was so I'd go out with the young people, Stu, and it was a very big mistake. It was a great evening, and then the next day I just thought, no, I can't do this anymore. I'm just too old. But so we ended up getting on like house on fire, Stu, and then poor Ewan ended up having me teach him for a year. But Ewan, actually, this is very relevant because, of course, you did do better in litigation than conveyancing, I do believe.
Yeah, only a couple of percent in it, but I did. The litigation module I passed. I think it was the late 60s, and it was mid 60s for conveyancing.
Yeah. So, Ewan, what qualifications did you get as a result of all of that?
So I qualified as I was an associate legal executive when when we worked together, first of all, before I was at the training, and then became a graduate legal executive through Silex as a result of passing those exams. So I did a condensed sort of graduate diploma. I think it is that Silex provide. And that made me a graduate. And then 12 months later, I was able to submit and become a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Legal Executives, which is just a fancy way of saying that I'm a chartered legal exec, really, through Silex. So qualified through Silex as opposed to the CLC route or through becoming a solicitor. They're sort of the three main ones, I think, aren't they, that you qualified to become a lawyer and work in a law firm. So they were. So now I'll sit here as a fellow of the Chartered Institute, and onto the next stage, because
that's the thing, Ewan, because that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, because obviously you are a bit of a sucker for punishment then, because how long have you been at Howes Percival now?
It will be a year next month.
Gosh, really? So you started
November last year, middle of the pandemic.
Mid-pandemic,
yeah. Of course I did.
Yeah, obviously, of course you did.
Classic time to get a job.
Yeah. So what? Because obviously you're a property lawyer, but what route are you taking? Where are you going with all this then, Ewan?
So next step for me is to become a solicitor, because and study for the SQE. We call it SQE in our firm. Yeah. And yes, which is the solicitor's qualifying exam, and then eventually I think there's at least one exam I'll have to do, which is the SQE 1, and then hopefully I'll get the exemption for SQE 2. But that's the next step for me, is solicitor's qualifying exam. Qualified solicitor probably 2023.
Oh goodness, I can sense another party. But actually, that's one of the reasons I wanted to we thought it'd be interesting to have a chat to you, Ewan, because I suspect a lot of people who are at the coalface, which Stu and I talk about quite a lot, probably haven't quite got their heads around the fact that the Solicitors Regulation Authority has introduced the SQE, and in fact the first SQE exams proper, I think, are, in fact they're in November. They're in about a month, I think. So this is the new way of qualifying as a solicitor. So instead of doing the legal practice course and doing a 2-year training contract, there are still legal practice courses that that it's still possible to do the LPC for another year or two, I think, but essentially that's being phased out and replaced by the SQE. I think the jury's still out as to whether the SQE will be seen as a better way of qualifying, but essentially the SQE is the first hurdle, as you say, Ewan, which is what you'll be slogging through next year, is SQE 1, which essentially, Stu, it's sort of like the black letter law part of the assessment, part of the exam, and you have to pass that before you can go on to do the skills bit. But the SQE 1, quite interestingly and perhaps controversially, is it's a 180 question multiple choice exam across all of the areas of black letter law. So, your contract, tort, land, crime, all the rest of it. And I think it's fair to say that, as I say, that's been quite a controversial move. And then if you pass that, you then have to go on to do, if you need to do it, which Ewan doesn't, the SQE 2, which is a great big raft of skills exams in all the practice areas. But again, what's quite interesting is that the SRA isn't prescribing any of the training. So, as far as the SRA is concerned, you could just turn up and do the assessment. But there are obviously quite a few training providers out there that clearly are going to be offering training leading to the assessment. So how do you feel, Ewan, about the prospect of a, rather than traditional essays, a sort of 180 question multiple choice exam?
I think it's good for me, for example. I think it's good for a lot of people. I think it will. That is a more straightforward, in a way, exam to do, and I don't think it's a terrible idea. I think you look at other industries like accountancy, and doing these massive sort of exams, these super exams, as opposed, it was very modular, I think, the LPC, and then shifting to something that is the super exam, which is what I think the media and the SRA originally called it many years ago. It isn't a bad idea. I think accountancy and other industries have done very similar stuff, and again, law's just trying to catch up again, as usual with the last ones to evolve.
Who knew? So Stu,
I don't think it's a bad idea.
How do you sort of focus on what training the people working at PCS need to have?
We just have a structure that is sort of bespoke for whatever person's coming into the practice. So it could be from an assistant or a secretary point of view, or fee earner. So we have it across the board. We take on people that are qualified, that have years of experience, as well as trainees. So I think across the industry, there is a shortage of people that have come in over the last sort of 10 years. And I definitely think over the last sort of 18 months with the stamp duty and the amount of transactions that were processed, definitely the industry has been lacking there. So I've noticed quite a few firms now offering sort of training academies and whatnot. So it's definitely something that most firms are focusing on.
They are indeed. So, and you were saying that Howes Percival have done a pretty, sort of bespoke package really for you. So how's that going to work for you?
Yeah, so the firm itself is still, again, showing that the law firms are still struggling to evolve. It's still very much LPC and training contracts. That's the predominant things that Howes Percival are offering at the moment. But there's me, a couple of others who are doing the SQE, and I think there'll be more. I think they've got a view of phasing it in over the next couple of years, because eventually I'm pretty sure that all firms will have to do it through the SQE. But what I said to them was, I'd like to train as a solicitor. I'd perhaps like to move into a different practice area. What are the options? And one was to apply for the training contract through the usual route, do the LPC, or they said you could look at doing the SQE, the Solicitors Qualifying Exam, and shift from conveyancing into property litigation. And I said, well, that sounds really good. I've already got a decent knowledge of property, I think. We'll see how that. And so that would suit me quite well. It's just applying, land law in a slightly different role, and it means that I can do conveyancing and property litigation for the next couple of years, while passing the SQE exams, and then eventually qualify as a newly qualified solicitor into the property litigation team. So that's what they offered me. It was that, or apply for a training contract, do the usual 4 seats, and then choose which practice area you want to work in. But that would have meant qualification 2 years. So instead of 2023 qualification, probably 2025 for qualification.
Yeah, you see, it's interesting.
I'm no spring chicken, so I thought it was.
yeah. But you see, that's what's interesting, isn't it? Because the SQE is instantly giving you a different option, a different route that's more tailored to your needs. You're already qualified. You're going to obviously get, you're likely, the qualifying work experience you'll probably be okay with. You probably aren't going to need to do the SQE2, the skills bit. So it does allow you that much greater degree of flexibility, which, to be fair to the SRA, and they've got their detractors, and I'm not always their biggest fan, I've got to say, but I think you would be one of their sort of classic poster boys, really. And again, to be fair to the firm, of course, as I said, the SQE is only just launching, really, and all firms are going to have to get their heads around it. I think a lot are hanging back at the moment. So, and it's certainly fair to say, I think Howes Percival are putting you through it fairly early will be, one of the first ones in actual fact to be really embracing it and putting their candidates through it. But how did you choose what? Just tell us a little bit, Ewan, about your research, perhaps not mentioning any providers particularly, but broadly, what did you find in terms of the training? Were the study options, and what made you choose the option that you've chosen? Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I chose to do, I'm choosing to do evenings, part-time, and it's going to be in London, because the provider in Cambridge, so Cambridge is where I work, but the provider in Cambridge was offering a part-time course, but it was for the November exam. Was the provider in London was offering start in January, exam in July 2022. So I mean, there are a lot of providers out there. It seems that most people who provided an LPC are now providing an SQE. So all the big names in legal training seem to be right up there providing this. But you can still apply for the LPC, I think, as well. So I think there's a very broad range. For me, I wanted to do part-time, so the provider I've chosen was very much on that basis, that it was part-time, and I wanted to sit a July exam. So my research became very limited. It was just, do you do this or not? So I phoned up a handful of providers, just went through their websites to start with, and usually get a call back, or they send you an email with all the information. And I just said, can I have this route, please? And they said, oh, no, we're not doing that. Some were saying, oh, we haven't properly reviewed everything, or put our, we haven't got all the marketing or whatever it was, all the information together. So you have to come back later. No, I want to buy now. That's it. Buy now. Don't tell me no. I'm a member of the YouTube generation. I want it now. I want it instantly. And I want it all done within 2 minutes. Instant gratification. I want my qualification now.
Ewan sounds like a client.
You're in danger of making a complaint, Ewan. How dare you? I want £200 off my bill, please. Just for saying I'm a little bit irked. I mean, I suspect, I don't know actually. I mean, I'm guessing there are training providers out there doing the SQE full time. There certainly are. No, I came across quite a few. Everyone seems to offer a full time, a part time. There were evenings, weekends for the part time as well. So there was a big, broad sort of range of timings that you can do, which was really good. I've gone for evenings because I've got a young daughter, so having weekends taken up completely didn't seem like the best option for my relationship, or with my partner and my daughter, to be honest with you. So. Yes. Now for 6 months. See you soon. Hope you enjoy that child. There's there's one provider out there that's doing it purely online, which I think will be attractive to quite a lot of people, albeit I think there's still quite a tight timetable. But you,
I
I
looked
think
at them. I did look at the purely online ones, and even the major ones that are offering you like a taught course, which is what I'm going to go and do. I'm going to actually go into lectures 2 evenings a week, are also offering a purely online course as well. So that is very much becoming the in thing, is to offer it purely online, which is great. It just doesn't work great for me. I'll be at my work computer, and you know what happens if you're at your work computer on Zoom. You're usually looking at the emails. You're usually working your way through work while sitting on Zoom. I'm not today, by the way. It's not 9 o'clock yet.
Yeah.
So you're safe.
Yeah. So Stu, you were saying, because Ewan's going to use his property experience and drift into property litigation, which I actually think is a really good idea. But you had a view on Ewan's career choice, I think.
Well, it's going to be a man in demand, I suspect, in the next few years. I think it's going to be an area of law, isn't it, that's going to be rapidly expanding. The amount of transactions that have gone through over the last 18 months or 2 years, I can just see it being a mass sort of pressure on claims and firms' PI insurances, where the pressure was there to get things pushed through. As Ewan said before we came on air, it's where's the greater risk here? I'm going to push these things through, and I could be sued for 15,000, or I could be sued for 5,000 on the stamp duty. Where do we draw a line on it? So I think, you could be a man in demand.
I hope so. I certainly hope so. In some ways, because then I get to keep my job. I think that's
that would be handy.
You've got to stay busy.
I don't think you'll ever be out of demand, you. And I have to say, even when I ran my own branch office and all that sort of thing, I think a lot of conveyancers, they absolutely know what they don't know. We know that we're non-contentious lawyers, but again, as we said before we came on air, that there's always that point where your conveyancing advice must stop, because you are tripping into litigation advice. And I always had a lovely property litigator, on hand at another firm, who I liked and admired enormously. And one of the reasons actually I liked him, because he was at another firm, and I would refer conveyancing clients to him who'd got a problem. But one of the things I really, really respected and liked about him was he never tried to nick the client. He never tried to say, well, let us do your property work, because I had quite a lot of clients that I'd worked for quite a long time and that sort of thing. And I think maybe that's, what you will need to cultivate, Ewan, is lots of non-contentious property lawyers who want to use your services, as a prop litigator. I don't think you'll ever be out of business, I've got to say.
No, and that's one of the big things that I think you have to do, that I'm going to start learning, I think, over the next couple of years, and certainly the partners in my firm say, is you've got to have good relationships with that commercial property team, potentially with the planning team. So you've got a sort of network inside your organisation as much as you have outside of it. So an organisation like ours, for example, has quite big teams. But you're absolutely right. If you're running in a much smaller organisation, then you need to go and make friends with all the property lawyers who are going to then the non-contentious ones to refer stuff on, the transactional lawyers, because they'll refer all the work to you.
You absolutely do. You absolutely do. Stu, what do you do at PCS? I mean, have you ever thought about getting a contentious lawyer in there? How do you deal with that?
Funny you should mention it. We have thought about it, and it's been something the partners here have been discussing. And I think the volume of transactions that have gone through is one rationale, but equally, I think the power of Google and the internet and what the information that clients can now obtain. There isn't a large element of a conveyancing transaction that people are trying to almost litigate now, isn't it? It's becoming that the boundaries are moving. So I think as we do go forward, I could see every firm having to have a department or a lawyer in situ that covers that work area.
I just think that often clients are asking me, you think about that building regulations indemnity insurance. They're saying, oh, why do you need it? And you go, well, are the council going to take enforcement? And you go, I don't know. I'm not a litigator. I don't know if they are going to take enforcement. I'll recommend you the indemnity insurance. but I don't know if the council are going to take enforcement. Here's the litigation team; they can tell you. You know, it's that kind. You need it, and again with boundaries, people often want to know what happens if it doesn't get. What happens if I don't maintain it, or what happens if my neighbour doesn't maintain it? And again, you can't talk them through as a conveyancer. You can't talk them through the stages of litigation. So sometimes they are asking a litigation question, even if they don't know it, even if the client doesn't know it, they are still asking a litigation question sometimes.
Definitely.
Well, I think that's a really important, interesting point, because again, and it always comes back to the thing that I've just said forever, is the whole knowing what you don't know thing. And when I was locuming the other day, I saw a typical old scenario, you know, seller hadn't got title to half the front garden, just the title plan, you know, the boundary went off at an angle, but, you know, on the ground it was straight, you know, the usual old thing. And I actually genuinely felt really sorry for the sort of paralegal or member of support staff who was handling the seller's file, because I can honestly say I saw the worst statement of truth for adverse possession that I'd ever seen. And it was actually drafted, and I genuinely am not saying this to sound like, you know, an arse, but I'm going to, because to bless them, the way they'd done it, they had absolutely no idea what they were doing. And they'd actually put together a statement of truth that looked as if it was applying for possession for the entire property, because bless them, they had just no idea what they were doing. But our client, who bless her was lovely but a first-time buyer, said, oh, well, the seller said that's all right, and I can just make a claim, you know, an adverse possession claim when I've purchased. And there's so much to unpack there that won't unpack it all. But of course, you know,
it's all straightforward. It's back to the straightforward transaction that I think you guys mentioned a few weeks back.
Simple.
Simple transaction. That's it. Yeah, it's just a simple adverse possession claim.
Simple claim.
But of course, you know, as we well know, we can draft, you know, we can think, well, we'll stick together an adverse possession application and do, but actually that could go sour quite quickly the minute the notices are served. So, you know, and likewise, of course, well, as you were saying, Stu, I think there's going to be lots heading into firms' archives that Ewan's going to see over the coming years, as we've just said, I think. But
yeah,
and also, of
hopefully
course,
not into mine, but we'll see how
say
that
again.
goes. Hopefully not into our archive, but
yeah, exactly.
Shifting from one to the other makes it difficult.
But it's, of course, even completions that don't complete. You know, we all glibly, you know, at what point does the service of a notice to complete become a litigation matter? You know, potentially as soon as the 10 days are up and somebody hasn't completed.
Yeah. I mean, I think as soon as a notice is served, it's a litigation matter. I'd be inclined to pass it straight on. And
I was going to say the same thing. As soon as that notice is served, it's, you know, it is what it says, isn't it? It's on notice.
Yeah.
Well, I would have to say, and actually, you know, I might argue even before that, and I'll tell you why, because I did an online conference in the last 12 months, because everything's been online, and a lovely barrister, she was lovely lass actually, she was, I suppose, being quite technical, but she was chit-chatting away and sort of saying, well, but really what you need to consider with your client is their options before you serve the notice to complete, because if they might want to pursue specific performance, then you need to think about that before you serve the notice to complete. So actually, you know, there's an argument to say you might even need to be punting it to Ewan before, you know, as soon as your completion doesn't complete, arguably, I would say.
Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? When we talk about sort of knowledge within the industry, I think it's just sort of process now, isn't it? That, you know, completion doesn't go through, we serve the notice, but actually getting to the nitty-gritty of why you're doing it, making time of the essence, and the end goal. You know, how often do people discuss that with the clients? I know here we, you know, quite often the default position is, oh, I'll serve notice. And it's, well, hang on a minute, have we gone through this with the client? What's their end goal here? Because it's really important. You know, you don't want to go on notice and do something and then bite you in the backside later on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like you say, you've always got to consider what the end goal is they want, what the client wants in the end. So you need to discuss it in much more detail. And some of that will drift beyond the conveyancing course that you've done, whether it be at Silex or on your LPC, or even training often in a residential property team. It's the client is inevitably going to ask you litigation questions, you know, which will be things like, what damages am I entitled to? What would you expect me to get? Would you expect an order for specific performance to be granted by the court? And you go, well, I don't know. I'm a transactional lawyer. Like, you know, that's and if you're a transactional lawyer, that is your response, and rightly so. You can't start advising on what you think a court might grant if the contract hasn't completed and you serve a notice and that 10 days expires.
I don't think a lot of people, I mean, I think the problem is a lot of law firms would treat the notice of service to complete as sort of a fait accompli. Oh, it hasn't completed, we will do this, without understanding that actually once it's served, you can't withdraw it. So your client can't sort of change their mind, and they're under the cosh too. They've got to be in a position to complete. Just because they served it, you know, they've also got to be able to comply with it.
I think a lot of firms serve the notice just to try and get the notice fee. Numerous times, you know, I've had it before where, you know, there could be a contractual time of say 2 p.m, 2:30, I'm receiving a notice. I'm thinking, really? You know, is that giving you enough time to actually discuss it with your client properly? But there you go. Well,
of course it hasn't. Stu, just tell us, tell us about, because we did mention the, the SDLT melee. Tell us about the disclaimer that you saw.
Well, we were gobsmacked. We actually saw one particular firm, who obviously we won't name, that had drafted, I'll call it a disclaimer, had drafted a disclaimer asking their clients to sign, which basically said, you know, we can't guarantee getting you through before the SDLT holiday. If you sign here to confirm that we won't report to you on the searches, we won't report to you on the title, we won't do this, we won't do that, we won't do that, we might be able to get you through. How that works in practice, absolutely God knows, but that is what happened factually.
I mean, I think that's absolutely extraordinary, because that's sort of, well, we'll pay us the fee, we'll still charge you, but absolve us from all professional responsibility whatsoever. I mean,
the questions that throws up. I mean, for a start, you're thinking, what about the lender? I mean, you could go to town on this, couldn't you? But without discussing the whole thing, just incredible the lengths that some firms may have had to have gone to.
I mean, whether that would even hold up, I just wonder if you handed that to the negligence or professional indemnity.
No, of course it wouldn't. I mean,
firm, they'd go nuts, wouldn't they? I mean, imagine handing that to your insurer and saying, "Don't worry, guys, we're covered. You know, I know we're getting this negligence claim, but we're covered. We've got this one pager. Don't worry about it."
Also, as a conveyancer, there'd be professional pride there, surely. I mean, how can you just process it? But,
really?
I
wasn't
thinking of that, Stu.
No, I think of the three people I know best in conveyancing, it's the three of us. I think our professional pride, didn't that just seep away years ago? I just think it might have been. I think my professional pride seeped away when Ewan said, "Here's the 8th Jaeger bomb, Lorraine. You're so competitive." And I'm so pathetic, Stu. I was so pleased when I won the Jaeger drinking contest. A Jaeger bomb drinking contest. It was ridiculous. I was absolutely pathetic.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I just want to put that out there, Lorraine. I look forward to the next one.
I was just going to say, actually,
sounds like a challenge.
Well, actually, though, Stu, and we, Stu and I are going to the Estas a do on Friday with like 1,200 other people in property, and it's a champagne do at lunchtime.
Jaeger bombs.
Yeah.
Standard. Yeah.
Funny enough, I think to quote something from our last show as well, I think Simon actually said, didn't he, that the lawyers outdrunk the estate agents. He said, boy, I think, was it Phil Spencer that quoted it?
Yeah.
Right. I think Phil Spencer said, God, boy, these people can party, Jesus. So
it's been a difficult 18
God knows what's going to happen after the last 18 months. People letting their hair down.
It's just going to get messy. On Twitter, and when people do thoughts and prayers, can we have yours at about 4:00 on Friday afternoon? Just as you're switching the computer off, just think, oh my God, Lorraine and Stu are going to be under a table at the Grosvenor House Hotel.
Champagne with a Jaeger bomb chaser.
Yeah.
It's
going to have to happen. It
sounds great, to be honest. Why not get out there and do it more? We are starting to get out and do a little bit more of that as well, and go out and see, whether it be clients or go out for lunches. And it is really nice for it to be kicking back off again, because it's
finally start happening.
Really difficult 18 months, I think, without that stuff. Quite often the job isn't great and has been difficult, and a little bit of drinking respite is exactly what everyone needed more of and just couldn't do over the last 18 months. So
I think you're right. Well, maybe on that that rather happy positive note, you and I was really hoping, actually, because I'm really interested in you doing the SQE too. So I was wondering if you'd become a sort of an occasional guest, because I'd love to sort of track through how you're doing. So maybe after the sort of first couple of weeks of schlepping into London in the middle of January in the pouring rain and the miserable cold, you'd perhaps come back on and let us know how you're doing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the firm did say I couldn't have the helicopter. They'll pay the expenses of travelling into London, but not by helicopter, as I requested.
Well, I think
rubbish, isn't it? Yeah,
I think it's a poor show. It's a very poor show, quite frankly. But on the upside, they've given you a bespoke training package with the newest qualification out there, mate. So it's not all bad.
I know. No, it is really good, and I'm really looking forward to it, actually, as well. I can't sort of wait to. It'll be quite nice, I think, to do both the property elements, the transactional and the litigious sort of side of it as in parallel. I think that'll be quite an interesting approach. I'll have to have my two hats on as I navigate my way through the SQE as well.
No, I think it'll be great. I'm looking forward to catching up. Well, Ewan, thanks ever so much for coming on, lovely. It's delightful to see you again, apart from anything else. Yeah. And it's just really, really lovely to catch up. And thanks ever so much. And well, we will definitely see you again, because I want to track your SQE journey. So so thanks for coming on, lovely. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
See you guys.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Bye now.